Howie Roseman didn't hide it at the end-of-season press conference. Without being pushed, without a direct question, he made something very clear. Changes are coming on the offensive side of the football. And when Howie talks like that, Eagles fans should listen closely, because it's never noise. It's usually a warning before real roster movement starts. The core of what Howie explained is simple, but powerful. For years, the Eagles invested heavily on offense through the draft. First and second round picks became long-term starters. Those players developed, hit their primes, and then got paid like elite NFL talent. Top 10, top 5 money at their positions. That success, ironically, creates the next problem. When your offense gets expensive, something else has to adjust. So what did the Eagles do? They shifted resources to defense. They drafted young, cheap talent across every level. Defensive line, linebacker, secondary, even positions Howie historically avoided early like corner and safety. The defense became a unit built on rookie contracts while the offense carried the financial weight. Now the cycle is flipping again. The defense is no longer cheap. Jalen Carter is approaching extension territory. Jordan Davis will need a new deal. Nolan Smith is moving through his rookie contract. Jalen Phillips is heading toward free agency. Nico Dean won't be far behind. Quinny Mitchell and Cooper DeJean project as long-term cornerstone corners who will eventually command massive money. Zach Bond is already on a top contract at linebacker. Morrow is extended. Giad Campbell looks like a core piece. All of a sudden, that young defense is about to become a very expensive defense. And that's why Howie said the roster has to balance out. Philadelphia can't have the most expensive offense in football and then turn around and pay everyone on defense. Even with creative cap management, backloaded deals, and aggressive cash spending, reality eventually shows up. Tough decisions are unavoidable. That's why Howie's message wasn't panic. It was preparation, almost like he was telling fans in advance. Don't be shocked when familiar faces on offense start disappearing. The first domino feels obvious. Dallas Goedert is likely on his way out. Contract year, strong production, and a position that can be replaced cheaper through the draft. The Eagles have already shown they value cost efficiency at tight end. Expect that room to get younger and less expensive. Drafting a tight end early becomes logical, not luxury. The role doesn't disappear, but the salary attached to it probably does. That's part of a larger theme: youth and flexibility on offense. Howie emphasized the need for inexpensive talent, not downgrading, but restructuring how the offense is built financially. The Eagles don't want worse players. They want sustainable ones. When your defense is absorbing more money, the offense must create space somewhere else. That's where uncomfortable conversations start. A Jay Brown's name exists in that space. Nobody is saying the Eagles want him gone, but financially, moving a player like that creates future flexibility. Huge dead cap now, yes, but relief later when defensive stars need to be paid. It wouldn't happen lightly. It would take the right offer and the right situation. But the fact that it even makes sense on paper tells you how serious the balancing act has become. Lane Johnson's future also quietly enters the discussion. Not because of performance, but because of time. If Lane wants to play, you keep him. He's still elite. But restructures, short-term planning, and possible final seasons all become part of how the Eagles map the offense beyond the next year.
Then there's the quarterback position, which actually goes the opposite direction. Jalen Hurts isn't going anywhere. What is coming is an extension structure that smooths out cap hits. His number only rises. The Eagles will want to backload, restructure, and manage that deal so the offense doesn't choke the rest of the roster financially. That's not drama, that's maintenance. Up front, changes could happen too. Tyler Steen is not locked down right guard. Landon Dickerson's long-term durability becomes a real question when you look at his injury history. The Eagles don't panic, but they always plan 2 years ahead. Drafting interior offensive line help isn't criticism, it's insurance. But beyond money and contracts, there's something else that came out of this season that matters just as much: the identity of the offense. While the defense played fast, aggressive, emotional, connected, the offense often felt tight, negative, heavy. Even players said the vibes weren't right. Saquon Barkley talked openly about sideline energy. The defense looked like brothers. The offense looked stressed. That matters more than people think. Talent doesn't disappear overnight, but confidence can. Joy can. Aggression can. Too often the Eagles' offense looked like it was playing not to lose instead of playing to dominate. Conservative second halves, predictable looks, emotional flatness, a quarterback who leads more with calm than fire, a star receiver whose body language sometimes spreads frustration instead of belief. Fixing the offense in 2026 isn't just about contracts and draft picks. It's about restoring personality, passion, freedom, the ability to play loose and violent instead of scared and safe. Whoever becomes the new offensive coordinator isn't just installing schemes, he's resetting tone. Nick Sirianni understands that. He's leaning into being a CEO coach, letting coordinators run their units, accepting the structure in Philadelphia instead of fighting it. That selflessness is part of why the organization still believes in him. But leadership now shifts more to players. Hurts, Brown, Barkley, Smith, the offensive line. They decide if the offense becomes emotional, aggressive, and unified again. So when Howie says changes are coming, don't hear rebuild, hear recalibration. The Eagles aren't tearing the offense down. They're reshaping it to survive financially, compete emotionally, and grow younger without losing identity. Some names will go, some roles will change, some contracts will get uncomfortable, but the goal stays the same. Keep the championship window open while preparing for the next wave of defensive stars that are about to get paid. This is the first stage of that process. The warning before the storm. The calm explanation before the roster actually starts moving. Now the real question for Eagles fans is this. Are you ready to watch familiar offensive pieces leave if it means keeping this team balanced, aggressive, and competitive for the next championship run? Or do you think the Eagles should protect the offense at all costs? Because protecting the offense at all costs is exactly how teams quietly fall apart. The Eagles have lived on the edge of that reality before, and Howie Roseman knows it better than anyone. When contracts stack, when stars all hit second deals at once, when both sides of the ball demand premium money, the roster stops breathing. Flexibility disappears. Suddenly every offseason feels trapped instead of strategic. That's why this moment matters more than a normal offseason. The Eagles are entering a phase where the defense is no longer the cheap side of the house. For years, the offense carried the weight while the defense grew. Now the defense is growing into paydays. And if you want Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Quincy Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Zach Bond, Morrow, Jayad Campbell, and the rest to stay together, something has to give on offense. That doesn't mean Philly becomes conservative. It means Philly becomes smarter. One thing you should expect is a stronger commitment to drafting offense early again. Not just luxury picks, but necessity picks. Tight end, interior offensive line, wide receiver depth, maybe even a developmental tackle. The Eagles can't rely only on expensive veterans anymore. They need young contributors who can play now, not just later. Cheap talent isn't about lowering the ceiling, it's about protecting it. If Dallas Goedert walks, that position becomes a focal point instantly. The Eagles don't want a placeholder, they want a pass catcher who fits Jalen Hurts and grows with him. Someone who can win in space, threaten the seam, and be part of a new offensive personality. That's how you replace money with production, not nostalgia. At wide receiver, things get delicate. DeVonta Smith is not going anywhere. He's part of the foundation. But the WR3 role absolutely changes. Cheaper, younger, faster. Someone who doesn't just exist in the formation but actually stresses coverage. The Eagles can't afford passengers anymore when they're reallocating resources to defense. And if A.J. Brown stays, the responsibility on him changes too. It's no longer just about stats. It's about tone, leadership, energy. This offense can't afford negative body language when drives stall. They can't afford stars checking out emotionally when things aren't perfect. Saquon Barkley showed what leadership looks like on the sideline. Celebrating teammates, keeping people level, bringing joy without losing standards. That model has to spread through the offense if Philly wants to match the defense's intensity. Because look at the difference between the two units last season. The defense flew. They hit. They celebrated. They played aggressive even with a lead. They forced turnovers and fed off the crowd. Jordan Davis grew into a leader. Jalen Phillips came in and immediately embraced the city. Quincy Mitchell and Cooper DeJean built chemistry fast. Zach Bond and Nico Dean became mentors. That side of the ball looked alive. The offense often looked heavy, too careful, too quiet, too tense, playing like one mistake would collapse the game instead of trusting talent. Second halves became survival mode instead of attack mode. And in the NFL, that mentality eventually costs you in January. That's why the offensive coordinator hire is bigger than scheme. It's philosophy. Whoever comes in has to bring aggression back. Tempo, answers, flexibility. Not just scripted plays, but identity. Something the offense can lean on when things go wrong instead of shrinking. Nick Sirianni knows he's part of that too. He's accepted being a CEO coach. He's willing to let coordinators control their side. He's willing to sacrifice ego for structure. That matters in Philadelphia, where ownership and the front office are hands-on. But leadership doesn't stop at delegation. Sirianni has to demand emotional standards from his offense the same way the defense already lives by them. And Jalen Hurts sits right in the middle of all of it. His contract will be managed. His role won't change, but his presence does. Hurts is calm by nature, stoic, focused. That's powerful. But this offense also needs visible belief when momentum shifts. Not panic, not silence, confidence that spreads. The best versions of Eagles football always had that balance. Discipline with edge, control with fire. So when you look at what's coming, don't just think about names leaving or contracts moving. Think about evolution. The Eagles are trying to build an offense that is cheaper, younger, emotionally stronger, and structurally sustainable while keeping the defense intact for the next championship push. That's hard. That's uncomfortable. But it's necessary if this window is going to stay open instead of quietly closing. Some fans will hate the moves before they understand them. That's normal. It always happens when good teams choose the future over comfort. But this isn't tear-down energy. It's recalibration energy. Howie didn't warn people for drama. He warned people for honesty. The Eagles are about to rebalance the entire roster, starting with offense, so the defense can grow without suffocating the team financially and emotionally. The question now isn't what will change. It's how much fans are willing to accept change if it keeps Philadelphia dangerous in January instead of sentimental in September. So let me ask you this before we continue. If the Eagles have to sacrifice familiar offensive names to protect the roster, the defense, and the long-term championship window, which moves would you actually support, and which ones would you fight against? And when you really zoom out, what's happening in Philadelphia right now feels less like an offseason and more like a philosophical reset for the offense. Not because the talent failed, but because the environment around that talent stopped maximizing it. The Eagles didn't lose games because they were empty. They lost momentum because the offense stopped dictating terms and started reacting instead of attacking. That's the real danger zone for a contender. You can survive injuries. You can survive scheme issues for a while. What you can't survive long-term is an offense that plays tight while the defense plays free. That split personality showed up too many times. One side feeding energy, the other side absorbing pressure. So the Eagles aren't just balancing money, they're balancing mentality. If you look at the way this roster is built, the future defense is already screaming for continuity. Jalen Carter is becoming the heartbeat. Jordan Davis isn't just a space eater anymore, he's a tone setter. Nolan Smith's speed off the edge changes games. Quincy Mitchell and Cooper DeJean give you a secondary you can actually build around for years. Zach Bond anchors the middle with experience and accountability. Jayad Campbell is learning fast. That side of the ball looks like something you protect. Now compare that to the offense. The offensive line still has elite pieces, but age and durability enter the conversation. The skill positions still have stars, but chemistry and emotional leadership become questions. The quarterback is established, but the system around him needs consistency instead of yearly reinvention. That's why cheap talent alone isn't enough. It has to be the right cheap talent. Draft picks on offense can't be projects anymore. They need to contribute quickly. Tight ends who can separate, guards who can stabilize pass protection, receivers who can threaten vertically and horizontally, not just fill space. The Eagles don't need more bodies, they need more answers. Because when games turn ugly, answers matter more than stars. Last season, when things got messy, the offense didn't always have counters. Predictable formations, conservative sequencing, limited rhythm passing. It felt like once plan A stalled, plan B didn't hit fast enough. And in the NFL, hesitation kills drives. That's why the new coordinator's job is massive. He's not coming in to decorate the offense. He's coming in to restore identity. That means marrying Hurts' strengths with aggression instead of fear, letting receivers win early in routes, giving Barkley space instead of only power, using motion not just for disguise, but for leverage, creating an offense that looks confident before the ball is even snapped. And confidence spreads. When the offense believes, the crowd believes. When the crowd believes, the defense feeds off it. Lincoln Financial Field becomes a weapon again instead of a pressure chamber. Right now, the Eagles feel like a team trying to keep control instead of take control. That has to flip, and leadership is where that flip really happens. Saquon Barkley already showed what that looks like. High standard, positive presence, visible joy. He celebrates teammates. He lifts energy instead of draining it. That's not motivational poster stuff. That's real locker room currency. Teams feel it. Now imagine that multiplied across the offense. Hurts vocal when drives stall instead of silent. Brown channeling frustration into ignition instead of isolation. The offensive line imposing its will emotionally, not just physically. Young players stepping in without fear because the environment encourages attack instead of survival. That's how you replace money with culture. Because at the end of the day, some expensive names will leave. That's unavoidable. But culture doesn't have to leave with them. If anything, it should get stronger when the roster turns over. Howie Roseman understands that the Eagles